So now it's my great pleasure to introduce Carl Homstad. Carl was born and raised in Denver, Colorado. He came to Decorah, Iowa as a student in college and has remained in Northeast Iowa ever since. Carl may be best known for murals in communities throughout Iowa and the Midwest. In fact, 3 of his murals are in spitting distance of my office right now. But his 50-year career spans far beyond the walls of the buildings that his murals adorn. We are very excited to share the exhibition. Not only will you get to see an example of Carl's work, but you'll also have the opportunity to learn about his creative processes, his career as an artist, and his personal journey. Thank you for taking us on these journeys, Carl.
I knew I wanted to be an artist at an early age, and I drew a lot as a child. I took every art course I could in high school and at Luther College. In my classes, I drew so much in my notebooks that I started taking notes in my sketchbooks. Like most art students, I believed I was going to become a professional fine art painter and the next big thing in the art world. I didn't realize that that was about as likely as becoming a player in the NFL. In fact, if there's anything that could keep you from being an artist, it will. I have done a self-portrait almost every year, and there is a panel of self-portraits in the exhibit. Here is a digital drawing from 2021. A big break came when I learned printmaking, starting in my freshman year from Professor Orville Running. This is my first woodcut. I still make most of my income from printmaking. I did a lot of etchings in the early days, but eventually I decided to concentrate on woodblock prints because etchings use a lot of toxic chemicals. Original prints have the advantage of being less expensive than original paintings, and they, as handmade multiple originals, can be displayed in several galleries at the same time. There is a panel and a video dedicated to woodcut printmaking. The next big break was the opportunity to study art in Vienna, Austria for my junior year. I had good teachers and access to the great museums of Europe. I was enamored with the great landscape painters and have done landscapes ever since. I also learned how to paint murals, at least in theory. They weren't going to let us actually paint any murals in Vienna. When I started, I did a lot of paintings outdoors, and besides my printmaking, I did a lot of watercolors and drawings from life. I wanted to build a large number of items that I knew how to draw so that I could use them in the creation of new images. In 1979, Andrea and I traveled around Europe for 4 months. We went to 14 countries, and I painted 40 watercolors, and we went to more than 30 museums. Museums and art books have been a big part of my continuing education. After college, I worked with the Iowa Arts Council, where I was on the touring art team for 5 years. 6 or 7 artists of different disciplines traveled to very small towns and gave art classes and did performances. For 10 years or so, I also did Artists in the Schools residencies in printmaking and mural painting. I would have the students make prints on styrofoam or make rubber stamps. I also designed and helped build sets and paint backdrops for many high school plays. Or I would supervise students in the design and painting of a mural. We did more than 100 in various schools. This map of Iowa shows the more than 130 towns where I have worked. Art fairs were a large part of my income, and I traveled around the Midwest with a portable stand and my woodcut prints for several years. Murals were another large part of my career, and I ended up painting more than 50 large outdoor murals. Included in the exhibit is a video about painting murals. My first mural was in Jefferson, Iowa. Murals are a good way to promote my work because they are like painting a billboard for myself. My last one was in Sumner, Iowa. In 1989, I went to New York to see an exhibit by Winslow Homer, one of my favorite artists. Then I started to do more oil painting. Because it would be hard to get gallery representation for my oil paintings, I had my studio lifted 10 feet and added the gallery beneath it to show my paintings. As I developed clients in my own gallery and got my woodcuts into more galleries, I was able to leave the art fairs behind, although I continued to show my work at Vesterheim for Nordic Fest. In the late 1990s, I became interested in Asian art, and I started doing ink wash or sumi-e paintings. I have always been interested in Japanese printmaking. I decided I would learn more about it by traveling to China and Japan. Also, it fit with my plan to find new and interesting landscapes to paint. I've done more than 300 ink wash paintings, some of which are in this exhibit. When I started to travel more, I found it hard to make the time to paint on my trips, so I started using sketches and photographs to capture images that I would combine to make new images as the basis of my paintings. In my day, art students were not encouraged to study business. I learned right away that being a professional artist meant running a small business. Fortunately, I had friends in business that were generous with their knowledge of sales and marketing. I have used strategic planning that I adopted for use as an artist. I also learned HTML and built my first website. If you would like to be a full-time artist, I would like to give you some idea of what you are up against. You never get a sick day, paid vacation time, health care, a pension, or benefits of any kind. If you make any money, it is because you made something happen, and then you start over. But if you use your imagination, time, and resources, and effort wisely, you can create much of what you need. Beginning with my time in Vienna, travel has been an important part of my career. I would plan my trips long in advance, looking at maps, pamphlets of scenic spots, and eventually Google Earth. Then I would plan to be in a great place during the golden hours, just after sunrise or before sunset. And I would travel during the day when the light was not so good. When I got to the location, I would take lots of photos and think about what would make the scene even better, like some children playing, different clouds, or whatever. Then I would try to find those things and photograph them and later combine the images. If you traveled with me, you would know that this is no vacation. For example, in New Zealand, I took more than 7,000 photos. When digital photography came along, I learned techniques like panoramic and high dynamic range photography. Lately, I've been doing a lot of digital drawing on my iPad, and here are some of those drawings on this panel. Now I use all the tools at my disposal to make a painting or woodcut. I start with an idea that I usually get when I am doing something outdoors. Then I take the sketches and photos that illustrate that idea, and then I use that as the basis of the artwork. I also sometimes use that photo as a basis for an ink wash painting. This shows the composition better than a color version. Or I might draw it on my iPad. Then I take all of the things I have gathered and make a version of the image that incorporates the best of each element. I didn't want to make reproductions or inkjet prints, often called giclée prints, of my work because I didn't want to compete with my woodcuts. I do, however, make note cards of several of my images, and sales of those have got me through some slow times. So basically, by combining the sales of woodcut prints, watercolors, oil paintings, note cards, and painting murals, I have been able to make a living. Now that I am getting Social Security, I am coming very close to my dream of 50 years ago to become a full-time painter.
Oh, thank you, Carl. It's so fascinating to learn more about your life as a career artist. Well, all of you who are joining us today, we invite you now to put some questions into the Q&A for Carl, and we'll try to answer as many as possible, have some discussion. We've got some time now. I'm going to start one off for you, Carl. You've given us a glimpse already at the wide range of work that you do, from woodcut prints to murals to photography. What media has been the most successful for you in terms of making a living from art?
Well, I definitely would have to say that it's the woodblock prints, because there's a good steady income from those that I get from about a half a dozen galleries. And, I can have the same print in each of those galleries. And original prints are a great way for somebody to start an art collection, because they are printed in multiples. Then, they can cost quite a bit less than a unique original piece like a oil painting or a watercolor. And well, also murals have been a big part too, although, probably the most I did in a year is 2 or 3, but that was way to make some money, and also to get my name and get some publicity.
When we were installing the exhibit, didn't you mention something about being one of the few artists that does woodcut prints?
Yeah, it's getting to be more and more uncommon, especially color woodblock prints. Nowadays there's an awful lot of digital art, of course, and then it's very common for people to just do a painting and then make a inkjet print version of it, or a photo mechanical reproduction. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's a lost art, but I would say it's kind of rare to run across somebody that's doing original color woodblock prints. Although now with the internet, you can find people from not just the U.S. but all across the world that are making them, and it's fascinating. I follow some groups, that put woodcut prints on my Facebook page, from all over.
Well, we talked about the most successful media. What has been the least successful?
Well, I don't know. I mean, oil painting is a rough one, because they take a lot of time to do. I might work on 6 at a time, and then it might take me a couple months to get them done. And the materials are expensive, and since each one's unique, they have to cost quite a bit of money. And most of my life, I didn't know a lot of people with a lot of money, so. But I'm doing much better now, and I'm selling more oil paintings and watercolors, and then I continue to sell the woodblock prints too. But I have retired from painting murals. Was just got to be too much work.
One of our guests asked if your Zen practice has influenced your art.
Yeah, I would say definitely. Like I said, I got very interested in Asian art, particularly starting with Japanese woodblock prints, which are just unbelievably beautiful. And then I went into the ink wash sumi-e painting, and during college, I did a lot of yoga and I did meditation then, and I kind of went away from it for a long time. But now I go to Ryomanji is a Zen monastery not too far from where I live by Dorchester, Iowa, and yeah, I find it really helps to clear my mind, and it also kind of, creative people. Kind of need that space in their mind, to explore. And it's been very helpful in a lot of ways.
Is there a particular target audience for your art or a demographic you found most receptive to your work?
Yeah, I think, because I've always loved the outdoors, I think, people that bike and hike and ski and things really appreciate my work because they probably have experienced similar things that they see in the pictures. But I don't know, I've been very lucky because I've pretty much my whole life I've done just what I wanted to do, painted what I wanted to paint, and I just am fortunate that what I like, which is landscape and a kind of naturalistic landscape, is something that appeals to a lot of people also.
In the video, you were able to give a little bit of advice to a person that might be thinking about a career in art. You mostly sort of described what life as a career artist is like, but do you have any other advice for someone that might be contemplating a career in art?
Yeah, I would say, just keep at it because, it's kind of a war of attrition. If you do it long enough, people will start to notice you, and then secondly, you'll keep getting better and better, and eventually, things will start to happen, but you can't give up. I could paper all the walls of my studio with rejection letters that I've gotten over the years from galleries and grant applications, but you got to believe in yourself and just keep plugging away.
Well, you mentioned that this has been your dream since a childhood, so I can see why you've kept at it.
Yeah, and it's just a really wonderful job. I get to go where I want and beautiful places and make pictures of them.
Is this a good time for you to mention your favorite quote from Winslow Homer?
Yeah. Winslow Homer has always been definitely one of my favorite artists, and he was quite a witty guy. And he said that what most people think of as talent is really just the ability to work very hard in a certain direction over a long period of time. So, you think, oh, well, that kid is really good, talented at basketball, but you don't think about all the, afternoons and weekends, it's practice free throws and layups and dribbling. And so, I think the talent, is kind of gives you the impetus to keep improving, keep working.
You said that you generally make what you want to make, but are there things that you have felt you couldn't make, either because they are too different from what you normally do or because you felt there might not be a market for it?
Yeah, I got some paintings in the closet, that, I thought, was interesting and worth painting, but, I kind of knew that it wasn't going to have much appeal, but, that's not the kind of thing you're going to have an exhibit of. But, it's trial and error, and it's, nobody bats 1,000. So, but, I find I learn something from each one. And, but I guess I'm not really inclined to do too much strange stuff.
But do you feel your art has been compromised because you may not be able to sell those pieces?
I really think, your art is more compromised when you try to please other people. If you think, oh, this is gonna be a good seller, and maybe I'll paint it over and over, or maybe I'll do something that you don't really feel excited about, but is gonna please people. One thing that I noticed about wildlife art is that it's almost always a good shot. It's a picture of a big buck standing sideways, or a tom turkey about 10 yards away, or stuff like that. And I think there's great wildlife art, and I'm not knocking it, but I'm not really interested in. I'm more interested in the whole picture of the landscape. Sometimes I include animals, but they're not really the focus.
You mentioned that you do a lot of strategic planning. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I ran across that. I was on the school board of North Winneshiek School for 9 years, and then I'd go to the school board convention, and then we learned strategic planning for schools, and then it was just a short small modification I made to that system, and then I used that for many years in my career. And basically, it's you take 2 pieces of paper, you write down the pros and cons of what you're trying to do and what you're able to do, and then you set up a goals. You do a mission statement, and then you set up goals, and then you have a schedule to you use a calendar to have a schedule to try to meet those goals, and then you review that each year and go through and see what worked and what didn't work, and rather than just sort of playing it by ear. And like things would show up, like I decided to lift up the studio, and then that took several years to actually accomplish, but it stayed on my list of goals. And I would make a goal maybe of traveling to, say, New Zealand or whatever, and then I'd have like a 5-year plan of how to get enough money saved up and do the research and make the contacts and so on. And so I think one really important thing I learned is that it's a business, and if you don't make money, you're not going to be able to keep doing it. So, and I would review my sales, and, I would keep up with the galleries and check the inventories, and, travel to the galleries. And one time, I was recently graduated from college, and I was going to like the 10th art fair in the summer, and I thought, I'm really a traveling salesman. And I thought, if all the jobs I wanted, that would be the last one. But, that's a definite part of what I did and still do to a certain extent.
How do you define success, both for any particular work of art and for your career?
Well, they're kind of two different things, because I really love some paintings that maybe don't sell or aren't going to sell. But I think that just keeping at it, you're bound to find, you're bound to make things that'll appeal to somebody enough to have them get out their checkbook. And so this success in my career has always been just if I can pay the bills. And sometimes that means really cutting back on your expenses and just watching every penny, and sometimes that means investing in equipment that can make you more money, like my printing press, or I just recently put solar panels on my studio and house, and so I mean it's not so different than any small business.
Are any of the pieces that are hiding in your closet successful, even though you felt they might not sell?
Oh yeah. I mean, I have some of my favorite things are kind of just for my own personal amusement, I guess, or so. Yeah, it's and sometimes I'm really surprised by what does sell. Sometimes I think, well, that was pretty good, but somebody ends up liking it, and so it's really, what I try to do is I try to have a lot of things. I just try to keep making things, and I try to have things. I have wood block. I have no cards that cost $4. I have black and white woodcuts that cost $50. I have colored woodcuts for a couple $100, and then I have watercolors, and then it might be $500 to $700, and then oil paintings that cost $1,000 and up. So I kind of try to have something for anybody, really, and good variety, and plus I like making them. So
Since some of those very early art fairs, a lot has changed with how one can sell art. Could you comment on that change over time for you?
yeah, that's a good point. The art fairs when I was younger were a very big deal. People, every little town had them. A lot of people went to them. A lot of people bought art at them, and over the years there's still some really red hot art fairs around the country, but they're very hard to get into, and they're expensive. The fees are expensive, but they kind of died off and became more craft and gift shows and so on. And then, the galleries, art galleries used to be a lot more common, and, you'd have a exhibit, and then there'd be art critics, that would write in the paper. And a lot of art galleries didn't make it through the recession of 2008. And then again, in the pandemic was very hard on art galleries too. So, and now, you can sell stuff online. I have an online store at originalwoodcuts.com, and you can get there from my website. I've had a website for almost 20 years, I suppose. And, I'm not as good at the, electronic media, social media as I should be, but I do get a lot of I do sell stuff online, and I do a lot of publicity, online with Facebook, and I got to learn Instagram and Twitter and all those, or I'm not.
Do you think there's a downside to the internet for artists?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the internet is like, all of a sudden everything's supposed to be free. You're supposed to just put all your images up on Instagram so people can see them, and I don't know if they print them out or use them, but it's like same with music and a lot of the creative stuff. You're just supposed to put it out there, and a lot of times there's no remuneration or no way to monetize that, at least that I know of. But but in the other way, on the other sense, like an online store where you can just go pick out a woodcut and put it online, and somebody can just come in and and just. Just plug in their credit card number, and I get a email, and so I mean it's a double-edged sword, really.
Could you comment on studio tours, which is something we love here in Decorah?
Yeah, that's something that's really worked out well for us here. I was one of the founding members of the Northeast Iowa Artist Studio Tour, and we have that every October, either the first or second week of October, depending on when Luther Homecoming is. We don't do that weekend. We do it the other weekend. So, and many hundreds of people come to Decorah, and there's between 40 and 60 artists that all open their studios on the same weekend. And that's been quite successful for me, and I think a lot of other artists in the area.
Well, Dave Comm, one of our guests, points out that one of the other things that's changed over time is your own artwork of adopting some digital technologies. And how has your approach to creating art or your aesthetic sensibility changed over time?
Well, I was kind of, I guess, I maybe, for lack of a better word, kind of a snob. And, I thought the only real way to paint was outdoors. And, you had to do sketches, pencil sketches. And photography was sort of a second rate art form. Or, it wasn't the same as, drawing or painting. But, now I've come to learn that, what really matters is the image, and it's not so much how you get there as what you end up, what the final product is. And so now I find I use, all the tools that I can get my hands on. I not only do photography, but I do high dynamic range photography and panoramic photography, and then I do the ink wash studies, and then I combine things together. And sometimes I'll, like one painting I'm working on right now, I was driving out west to go skiing in Montana, and I had my son take a picture of the highway, and it had all this snow blowing across it. And then I did an iPad drawing, and then in Photoshop, I combined the iPad drawing with the photo, and then I, move stuff around, change the colors, and and then, then when I paint it, I make changes, to that image. But I just think that, it's about image making, really, and whether you carve it into stone or do it on an iPad, it's, that's not the most important thing.
Are you a regimented artist? Do you say, today I'm going to work half a day on your artwork, or do you work when you feel inspired?
Well, it's a funny thing because it's kind of a combination. I mostly work when I feel inspired, and I need to feel inspired to do the painting and the original woodcuts and stuff. But you also have to work all the time in order to keep up, keep the business going. And that's a great thing about printmaking, is that even if you don't have a terrific idea, or you're not carving new blocks, there's always printing to do, and framing and matting and packaging and mailing. And the same thing with oil painting. I'm out looking for ideas and working on going through hundreds or maybe thousands of photos and finding just the right one, and then maybe finding other things to alter that photo to improve it. And so I try to work every day, but it isn't always, people think, you just go paint every day or draw, but there's a lot of work that, it just has to be done. I'm the janitor of my building. I mop the floors and clean the bathroom, and, I do the repairs, and there's always, you're always trying to contact people about exhibits or galleries, and so there's lots of work, but I consider, I do something just about every day. Maybe not on Sunday. I usually take off and just do what I want, but I try to do something every day. Yeah, some kind of work, and it isn't always necessarily that creative, but moves the ball down the field, so to speak.
Well, that's so interesting. Do you think anyone can learn to be an artist?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's really just a bunch of tricks, like magic tricks, and it's more just keeping at it. And I used to teach a lot of artists in the school, so I got kind of tired of it because I'd go to some students and say, well, here I can show you the basics of drawing, and here's the tricks, and if you just practice diligently for a decade or two, you'll really start to get the hang of it. And they'd look at you like, well, are you crazy? 20 years, But if you're willing to put the time in, and keep at it, I don't see, there's, and the great thing about art is there isn't any one answer. There's no one way to do things. There's no one kind of art or expressing yourself is important. Having a style and following your own impulse or your own ideas is really important. And there's room for anything to happen, and it's just a matter of putting in the 10,000 hours, as they say.
I think we have time for one last question. What can the public do to support artists?
That is a great question because without support, there won't be artists. If people, and the best thing you can do is to buy what they make, even if it's just some note cards or, go to visit them and buy, and, the one thing I want, is to sell my pictures. I enjoy people looking at them, and I like talking about them, and I like making them, but that's what keeps me going. That's how I pay the bills. That's how I get, more materials. That's how I pay for these trips. And so, I think, just buying what they make, whether it's, handmade pottery or stained glass or furniture, or, you can fill your house with really nice artwork and crafts, made by craftspeople, and it really, I think, improves your life, and it will help improve the life of some artists and craftspeople as well.